On today's episode of the SPMA Council podcast, we had on SPMA alumnus Jason Harshaw onto the show. This was a really interesting episode for a variety of reasons. One of which it was the first time that we had a former Brock hockey player on the show. Jason played for the team from 2003 to 2007, and afterwards, after a plethora of experiences in the hockey industry, which included about 5 years as a skating coach. He decided to pursue his full-time career as an NHL agent, where he formed Driven Sports Group. You'll notice throughout the show that Driven provides a plethora of services to his clients to help them get to the next level, and some have even reached the NHL. Notably, Ben Jones of the Niagara Ice Dogs, Jonah Gadjevich, and among others, and Josh Brown, who plays for the Ottawa Senators as well. I'm not going to spoil anything because this is an episode that I recommend you really listen to, whether you're a hockey fan or not. Jason's drive and passion for not only helping his players, but his drive for success in his business is something that everyone should pay attention to, and maybe even take a few lessons from his drive to succeed. And a special shout out to our co-host Luke O'Brien for coming on to the show. His podcast debut, not a big deal, and just as a prelude, this guy did an unbelievable job as a co-host. But that, I think, is where I will end the introduction. And we hope you enjoy this edition of the show. So I invite you to sit back and relax, because this is the SPMA Council podcast. How's it going, everyone? Hope everyone's having a fantastic day, and you know what time it is. I invite you to pull up a chair, sit back and relax, and welcome you to yet another episode of the SPMA Council podcast. This is our first episode with a guest in 2022. So that's a milestone in itself. We hope you enjoyed the first half the first half of season 3 compilation that featured all the best moments from season 3 so far. And we want to go ahead and thank the guests, the list of guests that have appeared so far on season 3 for their time they've put in to schedule recordings and talk to us, and the pointers and advice that they've given as well, which are simply invaluable. But moving on to this episode, we have a very interesting guest onto the show. But before we reveal information on said guest, let's meet the co-host for this episode, fellow SPMA Council member Luke O'Brien. Luke, how's it going, my man?
Going pretty good. How about you, Will?
Good. How's the first few weeks? How's the first few weeks of term been? It looks like it looks like Brock might be is doing a phased return to campus, so you might not have to deal with online lectures that much longer.
Yeah, hopefully not. I mean, it's not too bad right now. The workload's pretty easy so far, and the classes are fun. So looking forward to getting back in person, though. Hopefully soon. Fingers crossed. Nothing changes. Knock on woods, and hopefully nothing catastrophic happens, please. For this episode, we had on Jason Harshaw as our guest, and it was an unbelievable episode. The first time that we've had a former Brock men's hockey player on the show. he not only is he's a former youth sport athlete, but he's also the founder and president of Driven Sports Group, which is a sports agency designed to assist players that play in leagues such as Major Junior in the OHL, the AHL, the NHL, or even as far away as Europe. So, Luke, I just wanted to get your thoughts on the episode and some of the main takeaways that you took from it.
Yeah, it was a really fun interview to do today. And I just thought it was really interesting learning a lot about kind of the behind the scenes look at agency, and honestly, even just like his time in university with the hockey team and balancing that and establishing the Driven Sports Group. And I really liked his mindset. He's just always working, always looking to get a new opportunity. And yeah.
Mm-hmm. 100%. And going more on the Driven Sports Group side of things, there's a lot of intricacies to NHL agencies that people don't realize. The first thing that these guys are recruiting players that can be like 13, 14, and if they're successful, having that relationship for not just a few years, but like 10, 15 years or more, depending on how their hockey career lasts. So I guess what stood out to you is what Driven does on a daily basis.
Yeah, like you mentioned, I just think the age they start recruiting people was pretty crazy. Like, just I would not have, when I was 13 or 14, I would not have been ready to get into pro hockey, even mentally. So definitely not physically, but even mentally. And just the work they put into their clients day in, day out to set them up for success, create a great pathway for them to hopefully make it to the NHL one day.
And you mentioned pathways. The final thing that stood out to me was that everyone's pathway is different. Not everyone's going to go from major junior to pro, or NCAA to the show. There's a lot of people that have to work their way up, whether it's through signing like an East Coast deal, or doing or paying your dues in the AHL, or even going as far as far as Europe. That was interesting, and partly because I think a lot of students can relate to the quote unquote ebbs and flows nature of a path.
Yeah, for sure. And even Jason mentioned that, like, even though his hockey career didn't end up going there very far, he was considering even going to Europe too himself after school.
And I I was gonna say some stuff, but I don't want to be that guy that spoils the entire thing. So before we get to the interview, before we get to the interview, Luke, any final words before we send it over to Jason?
No, not really. I guess just enjoy the interview.
100%. And it's an episode that you're going to want to tune into the full interview, because there's a lot of stuff that you can take from it, whether you're a fan of hockey, trying to break your way into the hockey industry, or otherwise. Let's send over to Jason Harshaw, former member of the Brock men's hockey team and current founder and president of Driven Sports Group. Enjoy, folks. All right, for this episode of the SPMA Council podcast, we have a very, very interesting guest coming onto the show today. He spent 2003 to 2007 with the Brock men's hockey team, with numerous awards to his name, including a 4-time academic All-Canadian. He's applied his industry knowledge to be the founder and president of Driven Sports Group, an agency providing a wide variety of services to its clients who play in leagues such as the OHL, AHL, and the NHL. Please welcome the founder and president of Driven Sports Group and a Brock SPMA alumnus, Jason Harshaw. Jason, welcome to the show, my man.
Thanks very much for having me. That was a good intro.
It's called the old saying is called pumping the tires. I like to have a nice little lead in before we get into the questions, just to ensure the intro is not a snooze fest, but
yes, exactly.
yeah, moving on for sure. Moving on to the first question and the de facto first word of the SPMA Council podcast. Jason, what mindset have you adopted to forge a successful career?
I think the biggest thing with whether getting into the agent business or sports in general, I think you and I talked about this in some of our previous conversations, just understanding that it takes time. And
100%.
certainly there's people that I don't want to say they get lucky, because you got to still work hard, but come out of SPMA or come out of sport programs or business programs and get an opportunity to move right into sport. But a lot of cases you kind of have to invest in yourself, and sometimes it takes a little bit longer in terms of to make it a career, and you kind of have to start at the bottom and work yourself up. So I think the biggest thing that I've said to our clients, and it's kind of what I've always gone by, is just continue to get better every day. And if you do those things and you become a better academic and a better hockey player or a better athlete and a better human being, you're going to be successful in whatever you do. So I think the two biggest things is patience and understanding it takes time, but at the same time finding ways to grow and develop and get better every day.
100%. And your point on opportunities is 100%. I agree with. There is a element of luck involved towards getting positions. Some people take only a couple months to get to only like a month or two to get a position. Some people have to are unfortunate have to wait longer for a variety of reasons.
Yeah.
You can look to the past almost 2 calendar years as an example of throwing a wrench in recent graduates' plans. Despite the fact that the majority of them are smart, bright people. So ensuring that you are quote unquote driven is a big thing to ensuring that you're setting yourself up for success as best you can, especially if you're in a position where I currently am, that I'm graduating in a few months' time. So great points all around.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think it. That's part of where we came up with the name Driven. I'm biased because we created it, so it's in terms of the name of the company. But yeah, I think it's understanding. Again, coming through Brock and the education at sport management is also understanding if there's a place that you want to get to in terms of a job, there's steps typically to get there. And whether it's a thesis or internship or volunteering or different things like that, it's just paying your dues to get your foot in the door and wait and see what happens from there. But I think a lot of people get into the pro, at least years ago since I was in the program, but a lot of people go into it because obviously they have passion for sports and they go through it for 3 or 4 years. And if you don't do those things to kind of further your ahead of the next person, you're going to be, you're still gonna have a good degree, but you're going to probably be behind others that are doing some of those things to get in.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no doubt. And even as someone in second year, I'm already looking ahead, trying to see what pathways I can create for myself in order to have a successful career after school.
Yeah.
Too.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And so we've interviewed a lot of SPMA grads on this show, but you're the first one we've interviewed that played on the men's hockey team back in 2003 to 2007. Yeah. So what was it like trying to balance your coursework at Brock while ensuring that you were still in peak condition for games throughout the season?
I certainly think it's a balance. It's similar when you play major junior hockey or high level sports. Athletes typically that are good athletes, and not that I was an elite athlete by any means, but typically I find even dealing with our players is typically people that are good athletes are good students because they've been able to manage their time. That doesn't mean it doesn't take time, but I think talking to your professors and talking to different people that, I'm going to miss this class. How do I catch up and staying on top of it? I didn't find it too difficult. Certainly, I missed the odd lecture because of something to do with hockey, but I've always said, for me anyways, I went into Brock as, I thought I'd be there for a year or two and play hockey, because I still had dreams of continuing to play hockey, whether it was in Europe or different pro levels. And I always say to some of our players and people that I came in as a hockey player and left as a student. And I think, kind of halfway through my second year, I certainly knew what I wanted to do when I was done playing, but I had, more and more passion for the educational part and what I was doing in class, where hockey became, from a playing perspective, still important, but not as important to, if I had to miss practice to go to class, I was going to class. And in the first year, maybe I was missing class to go to practice. But certainly it's a balance between staying on top of it. It certainly isn't impossible. And many athletes at different universities do it. It's just putting in the time and balancing your schedule.
Yeah, and you talk about sacrifices. I mean, as regular students in the program, we might have to decide between do I go to class, even though it's been a long night the previous night, or do I sleep in those extra 20 minutes? Meanwhile, you guys have to decide between between a lot of other extremes, especially if say you're coming off a lengthy road trip in places like Nipissing or Lakehead University, which to be frank, aren't a walk in the park to get to it all. And that you have that you potentially may have class. May have class in the morning. So combining that. Combining those responsibilities is no easy feat, but having the commitment to do so certainly helps. And as alluded to the last question, with your university hockey experience, you're quite well versed in aspects of hockey, both as a player and an instructor with organizations like Pro Power Skate Niagara. Given all of these experiences that you had, what made you decide to specify your niche as a hockey agent?
I think what the reason why I chose Brock, or Brock let me in. I always wanted to get into the hockey agent business. I knew as a player, in the era that I played in, I was a good player. I wasn't an amazing player, but I was a good player. But I was also 5'9", 5'10" on a good day. And it was an era where it was bigger bodies. It's obviously the game's significantly changed. Not that we still don't have big guys, but it's faster. The game's based around speed, where there was a lot more clutching and grabbing and physical play probably when I played. So I knew going in that I probably wasn't going to play in the NHL. So what was an opportunity to stay in the game and just it really fascinated me. Not just the contract part, because I know everyone thinks contracts, but it's really kind of the whole industry that really interests me. And that's why I wanted to go to Brock with that idea is, in my back pocket, is if hockey wasn't going to work out, I'd like to try and get into the hockey agent business. So it kind of stemmed from there. In terms of, I think everyone, goes into these programs with an idea of what they hope to do, whether it's I want to be a general manager, I want to be a scout, I want to, work for the Leafs. But, again, I think it's understanding what that takes. So as far as my background is, like when I taught power skating for years, my biggest strength as a player was skating. So I kind of fell into it. It certainly helps me evaluating players in our industry. Finding players is skating, because mechanically I understand how the body works, how you move. From some of my other positions, like I did some of those jobs. Certainly I enjoyed them, but I always knew I wanted to get in the agent business. So when I was a trainer at gym and all these other things, like I was doing that, for a lack of a better word, to survive. Meaning, like, I was doing the agent stuff still in university part-time, and learning the ropes and still working 2 other jobs because you got to still have to eat and pay bills. And that's what, when I do get phone calls and people from SPMA or other programs that are trying to get into the business, it's not, you don't just graduate and say, okay, here's the salary, welcome to the club, because you're talking about recruiting 13 or 14-year-olds that may or may never play. And it takes time to kind of build your rapport and your track record. And while I was learning my niche and growing and understanding the business, I was doing 2 or 3 jobs that I felt I could do and I would be good at, but they weren't the jobs that I looked at going, okay, this is what I want to do. It's more of, this is what I can do for now to help me get where I want to go. If that makes sense.
Yeah. There are a lot of people that, don't think about that. When they're looking to build the career. It's only gathered through experience to realize like how many sacrifices you have to make in terms of trying to get the skills necessary to build that role. For instance, Pat, like I'm fairly passionate in sales and marketing. And for the past 2 summers, I took a job that was nowhere near the sports industry sphere. And sure, it was a sacrifice that has helped pay for most of my tuition, but the hidden benefits that came from it, where you're actually learning how to sell in different contexts, making you fairly adaptable, and you're also aware of the time commitment it takes to actually fulfill people's needs, to actually take care of take care of people, which I imagine is priority number 1 over at Driven Sports Group. Just to elaborate on, you're starting the agency business. Were there any mentors that you had that sort of gave you a few pointers or sort of acted as a bit of a guide towards success in the industry, or did you sort of have to forge your own path?
I don't know if I would say, I mean, early on, I wouldn't say I had, mentors. I mean, when I got in my internship with my first agency, the first person I called was Kyle Dubas, who at the time was, scouting with the Sioux Greyhounds. We were both in SPMA together, and he actually ended up coming on with me shortly after, and we worked in the agent business together. He was probably more involved than I was, because I was still playing men's hockey plus trying to recruit. If anything, I think Kyle and I, at least early on, and we only worked together for probably a couple of years before he went on to be the general manager of the Sioux Greyhounds, and obviously pretty prominent role with the Maple Leafs now. But I think part of it is, certainly I learned from him a little bit, in the sense of, because he had scouted in the OHL and kind of understood how to identify talent, what he was looking for. But I think both of us, to some extent, learned trial by fire, where it's, you find out what works, what doesn't work. And I think that's part of the growth. And then with my second company, which I was a partner in, but I started the Ontario office. It was a company in a different province. And certainly the people I had around, even though they weren't in the same province as me, I certainly took bits and pieces of what they did at the time, which I liked and didn't like. And I think that's part of growth as a business person, right? Certainly you have people you admire, but there's always things that you say, okay, I like this works. And because everybody's different, what may work for them. So I don't think there was one person I would say this is kind of how we modeled. I think it's a lot of seeing what other people do, see what works for you and what you believe in. And that's part of when Driven started. I mean, it's certainly the companies I was involved in, we still had the same mandate, because I was, my focus has always been on development since day one. Certainly, contracts and marketing, all the other things come from there. But if the player doesn't continue to develop and evolve as an athlete, like, none of those things come to fruition. So
Right.
With Driven, I was kind of, certainly with other companies, you have your stamp, but I was able to put kind of like my final stamp of, this is what we're about. This is how we're going to do things. This is how we want to continue to deal with families and people. And, that's kind of where we are today.
Yeah, and Driven Sports Group isn't just a sports contract agency. It also focuses on like tax planning, brand marketing, real estate, and player development.
Yeah.
So to further elaborate on Driven, how did it get started, and what was the process to get some partners together to initially form the business?
I mean, I guess first thing with I would think, I don't want to speak for other agencies, but most agencies do, maybe not quite the same extent as the services we have, but most, don't just do contracts. They do have, whether it's outsourced, they do have different people that help with players' taxes and stuff like that. I don't know exactly how each would do, but it's not uncommon that you do. It's very rare you have one agency that just does contracts. I mean, certainly
Right.
you want to have other services. So I don't want to say we're alone in that model. Certainly I believe in what we're doing, and I think we're different in terms of how we do things. But as far as starting Driven, I was with another company. Like I said, a partner in the company. There was good people there. There's still good people there. It wasn't. It came down to I wanted to continue to grow Ontario, and they were obviously primarily in the zone that in the province they were in to grow their part of the business, and we just kind of agreed to part ways, I guess the best way to put it. And I brought the contracts from Ontario with me, and there's a couple people that were with my previous company, and some that weren't, that I thought were good business people, and good hockey people and good family people. And quite honestly, once I sat down with them and said, this is the plan. I mean, obviously no one planned for COVID, but in terms of the growth model and what we're looking for, it wasn't too hard from there. I think people that we are involved in believe in what we're doing. Certainly, we got a good pipeline of young players. Certainly, obviously, some in the pro level, some in the major junior level that are coming up, and still we have quite a bit of players over in Europe playing in some other areas as well. So, yeah, I mean, it wasn't. I don't want to say it was a sales pitch or anything. The people that we brought on, I previously known from other business things that we've done. So, I like the group. I like the people we're around. I believe in the people we're around, and they believe in me, which is important. So.
Yeah, and that must have been a difficult decision. That must have been a fairly difficult decision to when you decide to separate. It seems that was one of the more pivotal career decisions that you made, where you have this partnership that is successful, but you want bigger and better things. So you eventually decide to take that risk and formed Driven. And so far, it looks like it's paid off handsomely for you. Going deeper into the operations side of Driven and the hockey agency, can you talk to us about some of the challenges that you've faced in the industry as an agent? It can be related to recruitment, aspects of contract negotiations, or anything else that has provided some obstacles that you've had to overcome.
Well, I mean, I think doing this as long that I have at this point, I mean, I think certainly it's a very competitive business. I think it's, for people that are getting into it, it's far more competitive than I think people realize in terms of like going after players. There's lots of agencies. There seem to be more and more new agencies popping up all the time. So I think from point one is it's extremely competitive. Certainly when you're going after or meeting with a good player in a family, 9 out of 10 times you'll probably be meeting with a family that's already met, or will be meeting with 2 or 3, 4, 5 other people, and obviously you have to find ways to separate in terms of what you're doing differently, which we believe obviously in our model and what we're doing is successful. I mean, I think the other thing that people don't realize is it's the hardest part outside of the obviously the competition is just getting players there. And people look at, well, the contract part, and not saying the contract part's easy. Certainly there's a back and forth, and sometimes it goes smoother than others, and sometimes it takes time to battle back and forth. But I always say when it comes to contract, it's kind of like, real estate, in the sense of, if your house is worth $600,000, chances are your neighbor's house isn't worth 100,000. It's just based on the market. And when you're talking about contracts with players, if you do your homework and look at the comparables and look at all the things that go into it, it's really just preparing yourself for those types of things and then being able to negotiate. The hardest part of our business is putting a player in a position to earn a contract in the first place. And obviously a lot of it's up to the player to play well, but our job, at least in my mind, as an agent and advisor, is giving the player the tools to be successful. And it's, especially with what's going on with COVID, it's certainly been I know it's certainly been hard on university students and high school students and everybody. But with the players, it's just, it's helping them through a lot of these challenging times, because it is hard. And regardless of what type of athlete you are, you're still, you're still a human being. So, part of the hard, part of the business, obviously there's not COVID every year, but it's just helping the kids when they go through those. Maybe they're not playing as much, or maybe they're struggling with an injury, or how do we get them on track to put them in a position to be successful. And then from there, obviously, good things happen. But it's never, and I've said this to a parent the other day, it's never an easy, clean path. Every player's path is different. There's not, this isn't the steps that you need to get there. Certainly there's a plan for every player, but that can change through an injury, change through a trade, change through a lot of different things. So it's being able to sit down with the player and the family and say, okay, here's the plan, and here's A, B, and C, and this is how we're going to get there.
That's a few interesting points you made. First about a path, and that there's no real easy way to get there. The stereotype is you go through a major, junior, and then you sign your pro contract. Maybe you play a few years in the NHL and then back to the NHL. But for that works for maybe a few percent of professional hockey players, but oftentimes, you might be bouncing around the coast. You might have to go to Europe, go to like countries like Sweden, Finland, Germany, maybe even the KHL to get to that high level. I mean, like a prime example, and the irony being it's a Brock Badgers example. Logan Thompson of the Vegas Golden Knights. Here's a guy who had a career path that was very unusual. Came to Brock, played a year there, bounced around the East Coast, found a contract with the Golden Knights, but it was only an AHL deal. Worked his way up to the AHL and through the course of 3.5 to 4 seasons, start his first game in the NHL not too long ago. So realizing that the process is probably going to be a road with ebbs and flows, and this is probably going to apply to a lot of people's career path. You have to be aware that a high level of commitment needs to be required of you to ensure that you're in a position as best you can be to succeed, even though you may pursue opportunities and it may not work out, but that's just life.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think, what I tell a lot of, our players when it comes to whether it's the NCAA, NCAA or the OHL option or major junior or what's the, the USHL, what's the path? I mean, there's, again, to reiterate, there's no perfect path, but I certainly think you can look at a player and go, okay, like, what does he need time? I mean, if you're going to step in the OHL, at 16, 17, like your window of opportunity is shorter than maybe a player who goes to school, because now you're going to school at 19, 20 and you have those extra years of potential development. So there's not one that's better than the other. It really comes down to the player maturity, The other part is academic, right? Like you gotta want to go to school. I mean, you can say I want to get a scholarship and go play hockey, but you still have to go to class. You still have to pass courses, and you still need a degree. So, again, it's just balancing the player's development, where they're at maturity wise, where they are growth wise in terms of their body. Some kids, hit a growth spurt at 19, 20, and maybe they are better to go to school and get their degree and try and turn pro at 24. So, I mean, you're right. It's planning ahead, but at the same time being able to adjust on the fly based on how things progress over the years when they're young to a little bit older. So.
Yeah, no doubt. And everyone has a different path, but some of your clients have already made it all the way to the NHL, most notably Josh Brown of the Ottawa Senators and Ben Jones of the Vegas Golden Knights, who, for those who follow the OHL, it was a former Niagara Ice Dog. So as an agent, what's the feeling like when a client finally breaks through after years of hard work and steps on the NHL ice for the very first time?
I mean, it's rewarding in the sense that how hard they've worked, and we've had a couple. I mean, my first ever player years ago was David Brohl, who played 5 games with the Leafs and has since retired. Now he's a firefighter. Josh, started his career in Florida and then was traded to Ottawa, so he's in his second season with Ottawa. Jonah Gadjevich, who was originally drafted in the second round of Vancouver, he's in San Jose now. So to see him play his first NHL game with no fans, because he couldn't go last year, to see him play in Vancouver, and it's exciting. I mean, and then you have Jonesy, who he's a guy that understands as well as anyone what he needs to do to be successful. His work ethic and his motor's as good as anybody I've ever seen. He's mature, he's well-rounded, he's bright. But yeah, I mean, certainly like those players I've had or worked with since they were 13, 14 years old. So there's certainly, a strong relationship there. And you certainly have a sense of pride for them. But I mean, I think at the end of the day, you're just happy for them because in behind the scenes how hard, guys like Jonesy and Jonah and Brownie and, Ken Appley's another guy who played with New Jersey a couple of years ago now with the Islander system. So, you're happy for them, but at the same time, I think you just feel good the fact because how hard they've worked and the time they've put in and the sacrifices that they made, like all these players, before them and after them. It takes a lot of commitment and drive and sacrifice to kind of get there.
Yeah, it's with a lot of your players, like the majority of them have had really successful junior careers. Ben Jones, I think he had like in his final year with Niagara, I think it was 2018-19. I think he had like over 100 points and was their leading scorer. But they get to the pro level, and oftentimes it happens with some of these players. It's like unless you're a generational talent type player who can put 30 to 40 goals in the NHL, you're most likely getting top 9 minutes, maybe more checking opportunities than you may expect. So the grind for those guys is not to underplay the grind that the star players have, but the path that players who are fighting for those top 9 or bottom 6 roles, it's a much tougher road than say a first round or second round pick. So I can definitely understand the sense of reward when you've had that relationship and know the grind that they've had to undergo for the majority of their life, starting when they're just 13, which is still mind blowing to me. But Jason, it was awesome having you on the show today to talk about your experiences in SPMA and your experiences with as an agent and as the founder of Driven Sports Group. But before we go, it is tradition around here at SPMA Council Podcast to give the guest the last word, to either say anything that they've forgotten, say what's on their mind, or just use it as an excuse to shoot the breeze a little while longer. So Jason, thank you again, and the floor is yours.
I don't really have a whole lot to add. I certainly, like I said, I appreciate the time and the opportunity. Certainly over the years, I've had a fair bit of people from Brock that have gone through the program or going through, or graduates that have asked for some advice. And the biggest thing I think advice I can give anyone in SPMA is don't be afraid to reach out and ask people. I think it's really, really important to start building your network early in your SPMA career, like first, second year. Start building those relationships and understanding where you want to go. And you don't need to have a perfect, this is for sure my job that I want to do. But I think if you build those networks and people to lean on, and build those relationships, it helps. So, and like I said, I've always tried to, certainly, maybe give back's the wrong word, but at least try. I know what it's like to be in their shoes, where you're just trying to call everybody and no one will pick up the phone. So, I at least try and return their emails and at least help as best I can. But, at the end of the day, like I said, it's a great program. It's a program that I think, if you do the right things, not only from an academic standpoint, but, volunteer and do those types of things, I think, the opportunities are huge. It's just, again, you just got to be patient and understand how to get there.
Jason, once again, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. Thanks again, man.
No problem. Thanks a lot, guys. Take care.
Thanks, guys.